Yoga with Robbie. I'm Robbie S.D. Willick, and today we're going to go through a 5-pose sequence. It's really great for opening up through the upper back, shoulder blade region, and through the neck if you're feeling tight or stiff or sore through that region of the body. A couple things you might want to have on hand. If you have some yoga bolsters, 2 or 3 yoga bolsters would be good. You can use variable sizes. If you don't have a yoga bolster, throw a cushion from the couch or even just a standard pillow that's folded in half lengthwise might be helpful. You may want to have a strap on hand or fitness tube or fitness band. And if you have a block or two, that might come in handy as well. If you don't have a block, you can use some kind of kitchen implement, small bucket, or a textbook that's quite stable might be helpful for you as well. So we're going to start with the half bridge pose, active version of Setu Bandhasana. And for this pose, you're going to place your pillow or your bolster towards the top of the mat. And this region of your upper back, just above the shoulder blade region, really the junction of the upper back and the very lower part of the neck is going to come to rest on your bolster. So you're going to be on your back, on your mat. You're going to keep your knees bent about 90 degrees or so. And your head is going to be tilted back just slightly. So we want to feel that junction of the upper back compressing very lightly into your bolster. And we're going to activate the half bridge pose. Very simply, we're going to lift the pelvis and the lower back up from the floor. And then lower back down, a nice smooth rolling motion, a nice wave-like motion. Just a little tilt of the sit bone and the tailbone up, lifting the lower back. And then rolling down. Even with that subtle motion, you may feel some pressure coming to bear on that upper back area where your upper back is resting on the bolster. And that's what we want to feel, just a very gentle pressure, a modest pressure. Over time, you can start to increase the height of the pelvis, lifting away from the floor. And the more you do that, the more pressure you'll feel coming to bear on the bolster. You want to keep it comfortable. If it's painful, maybe just reduce the extent to which the hips are lifting up from the floor. But you can really bring the entire back up from the floor, even lifting the shoulder blades up from the floor. I'm looking to the camera, but you do want to keep your head relatively neutral, looking up toward the ceiling. The reason we have the bolster in place is because it stabilizes some of the vertebra in the back, and the vertebra below have a little bit more freedom to move, so it's really accentuating the movement of the joints and really creating a little bit more length of the soft tissues at that specific level of the spine and the ribs in that area. So because we're trying to stabilize some segments of the spine and mobilize other, you can really adjust the position of the bolster. After you've done maybe 8 to 10 cycles, you can make a small adjustment of the bolster, maybe bringing it about an inch further down towards your pelvis. So it's going to land a little bit lower on your spine. And then come back into place. And we'll repeat the same thing. Just a little motion up and down, keeping it comfortable. Now I'm just moving the hips straight up and down. That's what I've been demonstrating so far. But you can also create a bit of a side bend of the vertebra by doing a little shimmy of the hips from side to side. So we'll bring the hips up and then we'll land them over to the left side of the mat. Bring the hips up again to center and land them over towards the right side of the mat. Should feel comfortable for your hips and your lower back. There's a little bit of tension that comes to bear through the lower back and through the hips with this side-to-side motion. You can really keep it quite subtle. You don't have to come all the way to the edge of the mat, even just an inch or two away from the midline is enough to create a little of that side bend and rotation of the vertebra in that upper back area. And we'll come back to center. You can take a break anytime. You can also integrate this with the rhythm of your breath. It's not essential, but it's a nice way to kind of anchor your mind and just focus your attention so that you're not drifting from thought to random thought. So, as you're doing this up and down motion, exhaling as we lift the hips, and inhaling, exhaling down. Sorry, that's exhaling up, inhaling down, exhaling up, inhaling down. I think I misspoke on our first round, but there are many ways that you can integrate the rhythm of your breathing with your movement. In this inverted position, where our hips and our heart are higher than our heads, it can increase blood pressure, and one way to help to regulate blood pressure from getting too high is to exhale as you're engaging more of the strengthening components. In this case, the lifting component, exhaling, inhaling back down. It's a good strengthener for the glutes. It's a good strengthener for the lower back area as well. Do a few cycles side to side again. And if you feel that bolster is not really targeting a specific area, or you're not feeling too much pressure or movement, you can even increase the height of that bolster, maybe placing a towel roll over top of the bolster or a thicker bolster. Bring the hips back down to center. We'll come up to a seated position. We're going to bring our bolster into a vertical position, so lengthwise along your mat. And we want to lie back on the mat so our lower back has some support on the bolster, as well as the very base of the skull. So you don't want your head to be dangling off the bolster, really arched back. You want some support for your head. You can really play with the height of the bolster here. I have a modest height, just one bolster. If you have quite a bit of flexibility through the upper back area, you can increase the depth or the height of that bolster. And the reason we're using the bolster here is to have a little bit of opening up through the chest area. And we're using the bolster lying back on it. Our breastbone comes forward. We're able to flare the arms back, getting a nice stretch in through the front of the shoulder and the upper part of the chest area. So again, lying with our back on the bolster, some support for the head. If this feels like too much of an arch in your lower back, have a bolster or a little blanket right under your pelvis to help build up a ramp so it's not such a sudden drop off. If you have good flexibility in your spine, in the lower back area, and that's comfortable, that's great. Here, we're just letting the arms rest in any comfortable position. And you can really play with the position of the arms here. You can have your hands quite close to the pelvis, maybe 30, 40 degrees away from the side body. A little flare out, or you can have the arms coming to 90 degrees out from the side of the body. The goal is to really feel this gentle, relatively comfortable stretch sensation through the front of the chest into the shoulder. If it's feeling too intense, you may wish to modify by having your arms come a little bit closer to the side wall of your body. Or you can use your blocks or a pillow or a textbook, whatever you have, and place them by the sides of your mat So you have a little bit of support for your arms. They're still in an open position. They're still flared back a little bit, but that's going to ease the stretch on that front of the shoulder, front of the chest. Legs have some options. You can just have them lengthened, straightened at the knees, a little bit of space between the heels, the feet just falling off to the sides. Or you can come into this bent knee position, and as you're opening through the arms, you can also engage a very modest twist of the spine by bringing the knees in a slow metronome-like movement, side to side swivel. So knees about hip distance apart, keeping them about hip distance apart. Feet as well about hip distance apart. You may feel as the knees move to the right side, you feel a little bit more of an opening sensation through the left side. You can pause in this position if that feels comfortable for you. Feel that stretch, even extending down to the elbow. If I really use my acute sense of body awareness, you can feel that stretch translating into the palm of my hand and into the fingertips on the left side. Bring the knees up to center, over to your other side, here to my left. Again, feeling this nice, subtle increase in the stretch sensation through the right side in the front of my chest, the front of the shoulder area, as my knees move to the left. If you really want to engage a more complete spinal twist, you just turn your head and look away from the direction that the knees are pointed. I'm holding this stretch, but again, you can keep it active or you can keep it static. If you're keeping it active, you don't have to engage that side-to-side motion of the neck, but it does create more of a complete spinal twist. And it's just a nice way to have a little bit of a fluid stretch, nice dynamic stretch through that chest, upper back area. We'll bring the knees back up to center. Bring the arms down by our sides, use our elbows to roll up, coming back up to a seated position. I don't really have a name for this next pose, but I made up Archer, the Archer stretch. And we'll be doing it in a side lying position. It's a nice opener for the chest, the upper back area, and the shoulders. And to demonstrate in this position so you can see more clearly, what we're going to be doing is having the palms together, and one palm just tracing along the forearm, upper arm, across the chest, and then extending out to the side, and then coming back to meet your other palm. So it's a bit of a rolling motion of the spine, opening entirely through the chest, and bring that arm back to close the book. So here we're drawing the arrow back, going way, way beyond. And here a release of the arrow, coming back, meeting your other palm. So let's do this on the right side of our body. We'll have a little rest for our head. And this is going to rely lying more on the side of the shoulder, which is not entirely comfortable for everybody. So if you're not comfortable on your side, like so, you can approach it by rolling a little bit onto back body. So you're a little bit rotated back. You're going to be doing that a little bit naturally anyways, but you don't have to be in this pure side lying position. So let's do it together. We'll come onto the right side of the body. We'll extend the right arm along the floor, and then we'll bring the left hand to meet the right hand. I have a little bolster between my knees just to balance out the pelvis. You can use a block or a blanket as well. Palms together. We're going to take our left palm, trace it along the forearm, elbow, upper arm, across the chest, and extending that right arm. And our head is turning to look towards that right hand, and then coming back across the chest, shoulder, upper arm, elbow, and the hands. Just do a few rounds of that. Nice slow motion, a little twist through the spine, keeping it comfortable through the lower back, upper back. You can integrate with the rhythm of your breath if you want. Inhaling, opening, drawing that arm back, taking the breath all the way to the top of that reach. Exhaling, bringing the hands back to meet. Inhale, draw back. Exhale, bringing the hands back together. Do a couple more rounds here. Nice, slow, intentional, mindful, even heartful movements. You can do this for many cycles. You can do this for a few minutes. You can do it as a part of a warm-up. We'll do one more here. Nice full extension of that left arm, opening and coming back to meet the right hands. Let's do that on the other side. Here lying on our left side body. Again, a nice little bolster to level out the hips. Either right on the sides of your shoulder or a little roll back to alleviate that pressure on the shoulder joint if that's not comfortable for you. We'll bring the hands together, the right hand on top of the left hand. We'll inhale, drawing that right hand along the arm, across the chest, opening to the side, and coming back to center, or to meet the other hand. Keeping it modest at first. The more you move into repetitions of a dynamic stretch like this, the more things lengthen and warm up. Initially, though, you may feel a little bit of a blockage or a restriction through the lower back that's limiting that full rotation out to the side. And that's just fine. You just limit your movement and respect those limitations. And the more you move into it, you may find you can get more of a complete twist or a more comfortable rotation. One of the main principles with gentle forms of yoga, I would say yoga in general, is to find a good balance between challenging your body but maintaining comfort within that challenge. And you can move with the rhythm of your breath, inhaling, opening. Exhale, bringing the hands back together. You can really reach forward as well. You extend that right arm, I say to meet the palm, but you can even go beyond the palm a little bit. A couple more rounds here. Exhale, palms together. Inhale, rolling open. Exhale, palms back together. Great. Okay. I'm going to do a little version of Supta Baddha Konasana, sometimes known as the butterfly or the seated star or reclined star. It's really known as the supine on your back, bound angle pose, angle, not ankle. We're going to do this with a block setup. So you can use, again, textbooks, block-like objects. I'm going to set my blocks up on the medium and the low height. I'm going to use my bolster and just lay it over my block setup. So we're going to be coming into a position lying on our backs on this bolster. And then using this as leverage to open up through the chest. So again, you may want to have a little blanket underneath your pelvis here if this creates too much of an arch or pressure in your lower back, depending on the height of your bolster. Here I have the base of my head supported on my bolster. We're going to bring our knees to an open position so soles of the feet come together. The heels can be close to the pelvis depending on the flexibility of your hip, or you can have them drawn away towards the foot of the mat. If that doesn't feel comfortable for your hips, if you have some hip issues, recent hip replacement coming up, a lot of tension through the inner thigh area, you can also have a strap and tie that strap around your knees so that they have a little bit of support in this kind of open position. I'm not going to use the strap for myself, but certainly can do that. Other leg positions, you can just have the knees together at the midline with your feet at the edges of the mat, or you can have the legs completely extended or even a little bolster underneath the knees to create a little less pressure through the lower back. I'm going to choose the classic Baddha position with my soles of the feet touching and the knees in an open position. This will, for most people, create a stretch sensation through the inner thigh. And in this position, I'm just bringing the arms into our flared out position as we did with our twisting position with our bolsters placed under our spine in a little bit of a different fashion. We're going to take our time in this position. We're going to create more of a static, restful pose, a little bit more towards the yin style of the yoga spectrum. You can close your eyes if you wish. Really focus on the open sensation through the chest. Again, with our elbows in contact with the floor and our back elevated over our bolster and our block setup. This creates this natural rolling open of the chest and creating a nice stretch of some of the strong, powerful muscles that connect the chest to the shoulders. This is a great position to really connect with your breathing, and the breath can serve as a really powerful anchor to bring the mind into focus, rather again than jumping from random thought to random thought or thoughts about the past or the future. We can bring our focus to our breath and use it as a fulcrum to really calm the mind and really more finely attune our sense of mind-body connection. As you're breathing, you can breathe any way that is comfortable for you. So through the nose, through the mouth, you can vary sometimes through the nose or the mouth. But if you're breathing more deeply and more slowly, nose breathing is helpful to really slow down the breathing rate. And as we do that, and we slow down the pace of our breathing, there is a corresponding change in our heart rate. Our heart rate also slows down in conjunction with the slowing of our breathing rate. And this helps to recruit the very powerful relaxation response in the body. Relaxation response is the complementary response to the fight-flight response. The relaxation response is really activated by the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest component of the nervous system. And simple breathing, just extending the depth of your breathing modestly, keeping a nice, deeper in-breath and a full but not forced out-breath. Just slowing down the breathing and bringing your mind to a focused state on the breathing really helps to activate that relaxation response, bringing a sense of well-being, calmness, equanimity, and helping to boost a number of systems of the body, in particular the digestive system, that is really activated with the parasympathetic nervous system, or the vagus nerve, one of the main components of that system. As you're doing your deeper breathing, you want to feel an expansion both through the belly and the chest. So drawing the air into your lungs, feeling an expansion through the abdomen, as well as an expansion through the rib cage. With this elevated position of our rib cage, we're going to feel it a little bit more clearly or in a more pronounced fashion through the rib cage as you breathe in. Maybe being a little bit more aware of that tension or expansion around the front of the rib cage, the side of the rib cage, and the breastbone. So a fairly full, deep in-breath, if you can, through your nose, out through your nose and in through your nose. But again, whatever is natural and comfortable for you. You can vary the position of the arms as well if you need a little change. You can also have bolsters or blankets or blocks nearby if you want to change the orientation of the arms. If you're feeling tingling or numbness starting to develop in the fingers, it creates a little bit of a stretch through this area, and the nerves that emerge from the neck have to pass through structures in the upper chest area, the lower part of the neck. This stretch will create tension on one muscle in particular, the pec minor, which can stimulate that bundle of nerves, leading to a little bit of tingling or numbness in the hands. If you find that, you can alleviate the tension of that muscle by having your arms up, supported on bolsters. You can also vary the position of the arms. If you want to have a little bit more intense of a stretch, you can have your arms resting more in an upright position, supported on one or two bolsters. Just flaring the arms out, changing the angle of the stretch, creating a different intensity or a different orientation of tension on the soft tissues that are opened up through this chest opener, shoulder opener. Just a couple more quiet breaths here. Tuning into your own breathing, feeling that expansion of the belly and the chest, and seeing if you can link that expansion of the belly and chest and that recoil of the belly and chest that happens with your in-breaths and out-breaths. Seeing if you can link that expansion, retraction to an increase and decrease in the stretch sensation through the chest, shoulders, even the upper back area. So a few quiet breaths on your own. Let's bring the knees together if they're apart, or gently roll your legs back and forth, bringing a little bit of looseness or movement to the lower back. You can do a little side sway of the knees from side to side. Release the arms so that they come closer to your hips, your hands closer to your hips, and we'll use our elbows, forearms, and hands to roll up, and we'll come up to a seated position. We'll set up for our very last pose, the fish pose, Matsyasana. So you can use a block and a bolster setup or a blanket setup for this pose. This height may be too much for some people if you're really restricted through the neck, upper back area. So I'm going to demonstrate without the block, but you may have that block as an option for you. What we're trying to do in this pose is create some opening through the lower part of the neck, the lower part of the throat, around the collarbone area. There are many benefits of this pose, but with upper back, neck issues, joint and muscle issues, there tends to be a lot of tension in this area, and this is just a nice opener. So a number of different options for the feet. I'm going to demonstrate this just with my legs in a straightened position. Here you're going to come onto the bolster so that you have the very base of your skull still supported on that bolster, but there'll be a little rolling back of the neck. You want to keep it to your comfort. You want to feel comfort through the back of the neck. You don't want to feel crunching, compression, certainly not pain. If that's the case, just avoid the pose or just come into a restful pose on your back without the bolster. Arms can be flared out to the side a little bit. What we're trying to do here is create a little distance between the chin and the breastbone. Even with this little modest arch in the neck, you should be careful. If you start to feel nauseated, if you start to feel dizzy or disoriented or a little bit spacey, if you have unusual visual phenomenon happening or some unusual sensory changes, you may be too far into this back bend position for the neck, which for some people can limit blood flow to and from the head or the brain. So safe for most people, but if your neck is significantly restricted, you may wish to bring the bolster more so it's fully under your head, or just take the bolster out entirely. But even this modest intention of bringing the chest away from the breastbone creates a lengthening through the muscles in the neck, which can really tighten up after things like a motor vehicle accident or a whiplash incident. Often there's a lot of strain and chronic tension on these muscles. You can really get a nice opening in upward facing dog, which we are not going to demonstrate in this class, but in an upcoming video on the moderate intensity playlist, we'll have that as an option. But in our current pose, you can also bring the teeth lightly together, not clenching, but bringing the teeth together and having some length through the neck, thinking of the crown of the head moving away from the shoulders. You can do a very modest turn of your head to the side. You may feel as you turn to the right a slight increase in tension through the left side. As you turn to the left, you may feel a slight increase in tension through the right side of the neck and the throat. As you deepen your breaths, feeling that expansion into the upper part of the chest, around the collarbone area, you may also feel an increase in the stretch sensation through that lower part of the neck. To come out of this pose safely, we're going to bend the knees. We're going to shimmy our hips down towards our heels a little bit. And as we do that, that's bringing the head more completely onto the bolster. So we're not in that bent back position. Our head is in a more neutral position or just a slight forward bend position. Here, we'll take a couple of deep breaths. As you inhale, again, just feeling that nice expansion through your body. As you exhale, just connecting with your supports, where your body is making contact with the floor or your props, just settling into those contact surfaces. And as you do so, thinking of softening around those surfaces, just letting your body have a brief opportunity to really settle and release. When you're ready to come up, we're going to do a little turn onto our left side, just pausing in a sideline position briefly. If you feel any lightness in your head in this position, really take your time to let it clear. Just hang out here for a little bit longer. Or if you feel ready, coming up to a seated position. Any comfortable seated position. Really grounding through the foundation of our sit bones and our legs and our feet, feeling stable and secure. And through our spine, a subtle feeling of lightness, of being lifted, a nice lengthening from the sit bones all the way up through the crown of the head. Inhaling, feeling that subtle lengthening. Exhale, a little softening of the spine, settling into the sit bones. And if you like, with your next in-breath, sweep the arms overhead, bringing the hands close together or together. Exhaling, drawing your hands down to your chest, resting at the heart center. Taking a moment of appreciation for yourself, for doing some commitment, making a commitment to your health and your well-being, giving yourself credit, and giving yourself love. Namaste. Thank you for joining me. It's the Yoga Nook with Robbie.